Hello, welcome. We're just going to give it a few minutes to allow everybody to join. All right, shall we go ahead and get started? Welcome to the community webinar for Kilnside Energy Park. This is our first community session. I'm going to start with just some quick housekeeping. This session is being recorded. You'll be able to find the recording on our website as soon as it is ready. This is a question and answer session, so what we're going to do is present a few slides to you, and then you can ask questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. It's a little bit different depending on what device you're currently looking at, but it should look like a little box with a question mark in it. So feel free to type your questions in there, and we'll answer them either as we're going through the slides or at the end. And with that, I can see we've got a good crowd here. So we'll start out by introducing ourselves. Aaron, would you start us out?
Thanks, Emily. So my name's Aaron, and I'm a development manager at Orkera. So I'll be project managing the planning application moving forward.
Rosie?
Hello, my name's Rosie. I work for Akira and I work closely with the PR and comms teams. I'm the community liaison manager. So throughout the process, I work with communities to see how we can be more mindful with our development.
Sophie?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a town planner at Arup. So we're providing planning and environmental assessment services to Orkera.
And Dave?
So I'm Dave Brown. I'm an Associate Director at Arup, so I'm overseeing the environmental and planning aspects on the project.
All right, and Kaylee.
Hi everyone, my name is Kaylee. I'm an account executive at Sec Newgate. I work with Emily on the public engagement side of the project, and I'll be helping to do the slides in the session.
All right, and with that, can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so as I said, the agenda for tonight is that we will explain a bit more about the proposals for Kilnside, as well as the development process and what you can expect over the next year or two. And now, Aaron, I think I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to quickly introduce you to Orkera and then also the project as it currently stands. Kaylee, you're right to move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So Kilnside Energy Park is the brand that we are putting behind the solar farm. Orkera is the developer that sits behind it. So Orkera specialises in energy generation and storage projects. And I think it's quite important to note is we aim to build, own and operate. So our intention here is to get the permission, get on site, develop it and maintain and operate it throughout the process. So a bit different to some of the others who may get the consent and sell that on at a later date. Our projects that you can see on the right hand side there are what we're currently in construction. So that's up in Benthead, North Ayrshire in Scotland, all the way down to Gayward down in Kent. So 4 of those are solar projects, and then the one up in Benthead in North Ayrshire in Scotland is solar and battery energy storage. So similar to what we're proposing here for Kilnside Energy Park. And then, just obviously because we aim to be here to build and operate, we're really trying to put a focus on community engagement, what we can do to help assist. Obviously, we've got a large team behind us, so really hoping we can have some meaningful impact that residents actually see. Looking forward to sort of working closely with you throughout the sort of life cycle of the project. Next slide, please, Kaylee. So as just mentioned, what is Kilnside Energy Park? So it's a solar farm with battery energy storage, and it will be located to the northwest of Great Casserton in Rutland and on land either side of the A1, and it would connect into the national grid near Ryle. Next slide, please. So apologies, I know a lot of you are well versed in this with Mallard Pass, etc. But just to sort of confirm when we say solar farm what it is. So as you can see, there's sort of 5 components there along the bottom. So that's the actual panels themselves. There's underground cabling, which links the panels to the inverters and around the site. There's the inverters themselves, which changes it from DC current to AC. There's the battery energy storage systems. So these are sort of large containerized batteries, which store up any excess solar and send it unwasted. And then they can hold that. So say when the sun isn't shining, and then put that back into the grid. So then any sort of energy generated isn't just sat there wasted, or we have to turn anything off. And then, of course, there's a substation, which is where all the inverters and the BESS transfer it to national grid. And then that goes off into the national grid system. Next slide, please, Kaylee. So yeah, the solar farm isn't just those technical points. That is what is the sort of technical elements of it. But as you will see throughout the process out, is that there's a lot more to it than just the solar farm. Green spaces are going to be a key part of it. Obviously, there's biodiversity net gain, which we need to hit, and we will be hitting. Wildlife buffers, landscape buffers, and just generally increasing the habitats where wildlife can flourish, as well as sort of new native grasses under and around the panels, and just help help support that diverse ecosystem. So yeah, we'll be working through surveys and working through design and layout and identifying areas where we can put in these green spaces. Next slide, please. And then, yeah, as I said there, that also includes sort of buffers around homes and villages to reduce visual impacts and public rights of way, etc. So, like I say, when we get to the design stages later on in this year, hopefully we can work with you guys, understand your local knowledge, and try and reduce the impact of this development on this local communities that are around the site. And then just on why we need solar power. So yeah, as it says there, the last coal-fired power station in the UK was closed in 2024. Obviously now we need renewable energy sources to come online to replace what has been lost. The UK has obviously set a target for clean power by 2035 to help fight against climate change and support energy security. And so as we're cutting our reliance on fossil fuels, we need to generate electricity. And yeah, the solar farm is a way to help meet some of this demand. And just sort of to highlight how much energy we do need, that is the difference there you can see on screen. So by 2035, we need to increase it from 17 gigawatts up to 65 gigawatts. So it's quite a leap. And as sort of explained there on the slide, 400 megawatts is just under half a gigawatt. So this project on its own is a good contribution towards that. Why this location is probably a key question you will ask. So the National Grid have noticed that there's spare capacity within the system, and so you can only connect to projects where National Grid have identified this. So we've secured an agreement to connect to the existing National Grid transmission line between Ryle and Keswick. So that's the yellow dotted line you can see throughout the middle of the screen there. So that is our point of connection. So National Grid at the moment haven't explicitly said where we're connecting to. So we're waiting to find that out. And we have also sent through a substation siting study to them to help try and inform that. So essentially what we're going to do here is work with them and understand where we can connect to. So for example, on that plan there, you can see there's quite a few squiggly dashed lines that come off. And essentially there are potential cable routes. So there's one going to the north, one going directly across to the east, and then one going to the southeast. So that just covers all sort of areas of where that'll be. So yeah, we're going to undertake some surveys and assess that. And we hope to find out more from National Grid as to where we are connecting. Obviously, I know there's Ryles at capacity, so the sort of options are whether they upgrade Ryle and provide a sort of an extension there, we can connect there, whether they do a new substation within the middle, or there's also the Wemmel, the Western Marshes Eastern link, which is towards the north. So there are sort of current options, so we're just sort of optioneering out every option, just making sure we have things covered. But we're obviously looking forward to National Grid confirming where our point of connection will be, and then we can also then tell you where our cable route will be going underground and where our point of connection is. But essentially, this is why we've looked in this location, is because National Grid have confirmed there's capacity within there and provided us with an agreement to connect into that 400 kV system that you can see there. Next slide, please. And then just more specifically, why this exact location of land. So yeah, we've obviously used that sort of 400 kV line as a centre point of where we search for suitable land. And then we look for generally flat or gently south-facing topography, a lack of environmental designations such as ancient woodlands or triple SIs, which are sites of special scientific interest. We try to move it away from dense population centres as best as we can. Good accessible routes such as the A1. And then, yeah, trying to get one that's visually as screened as possible. So good existing hedgerows to help sort of eliminate or reduce those visual impacts. And then just finally as well, within the sort of Rutland local plan, they identified this area as suitable for solar. So that was another reason why we sort of focused on this land that you have seen within the plans and the media that you've received. So I assume you will be have seen this plan. So this just sets out the sort of total area of what we have secured through land agreements. So obviously at this time we've just launched a project. We're undertaking surveys and starting engagement with both local residents and statutory consultees. And so at the moment, what you've seen there in the yellow is just the total area of what we are proposing. We need to undertake further surveys to understand where the landscape buffers will go, where the visual buffers will go, what bits of land is ecologically sensitive that we can not put panels on, and how we can help link habitats. And then, yeah, obviously then where the panels, the battery energy storage and the substations will go. So over the next 6 months, we're hoping to take you on a journey and help have some positive discussions and understand how we can get involved with the design and how we can help reduce the impacts within the local community. And I think that's all from me. Is it over to yourself, Emily?
No, we're going to hand it over to Sophie, please.
Apologies.
Thank you. I'm just going to talk you through the planning process. If I could have the next slide, please. So because the proposed development is going to generate more than 50 megawatts of energy, it is classed as a nationally significant infrastructure project, or an NSIP. Consequently, a development consent order is required, so that's as opposed to a planning permission, to construct, operate and ultimately decommission it. The DCO will be decided by the relevant Secretary of State. In this case, it's the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, and that's following an assessment and recommendation from the Planning Inspectorate, or PINS. Just an example of one of the differences between a DCO application and a planning application is that the policy framework for which the application is assessed against are the national policy statements rather than the local plan for the area or the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF. However, it's important to note that those documents are still relevant and have formed part of our site selection work, which is ongoing and will be used as part of the assessment by PINS. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. In fact, this one's for you, Emily, to cover consultation.
Yes, so before we submit the DCO application, we are required to consult on the project. This is called pre-application consultation. It's a very important part of the process because it helps us get the local knowledge that we know is held by the community and other key stakeholders and build that into the design. We've already started some of this engagement. So we've been in contact with Rutland as well as some technical bodies, including Natural England, the Environment Agency, National Highways and Historic England, and we'll continue to engage with them in a larger group throughout the development of the project. We will also be engaging with local communities this autumn ahead of a more formal consultation that will take place next year. And feedback from that consultation will help inform the updated design that we submit in the DCO application. Next slide.
Thank you. So we're required to undertake an environmental impact assessment. So that is effectively a multi-stage process for identifying and assessing any likely significant effects that would arise from the project if it were to be consented. And that's in terms of its construction phase, operational phase, and the decommissioning of it. And then subsequently, we would need to identify suitable mitigation measures if significant effects are identified. The EIA process is made up of a number of key stages. We're currently right at the start of the first stage, which is scoping. So this is essentially where we make a formal request to the Planning Inspectorate for them to state their formal opinion, otherwise known as the scoping opinion, as to the scope and level of detail of our environmental statement. The next stage is we will publish our preliminary results of our assessment work and consult on them. And then that will feed into the final environmental statement, which is essentially a comprehensive suite of assessment work and forms quite a major component of the DCO application when it's finalised. So this slide presents quite a high-level overview of our timeline. It starts so currently we're at the scoping stage and also the public launch stage, so summer 2025. We will then have ongoing engagement from this point onwards into later on this year. And then in early next year, so sort of January to February, we'll have a more formal public consultation round where we'll be able to publish more detailed plans by that stage when we've got a design, and then ultimately submit the application towards the end of 2026. And based on typical timeframes for other DCO projects, we anticipate a decision around spring 2028.
All right, so with that, we've concluded our presentation. We have a number of questions that have been entered. If you have more, now's a good time to add them to the Q&A function. And I think we'll just start at the top. So the first question is, where will the solar panels for the proposed Kilnside be manufactured? And can you guarantee that they won't come from a Uyghur slave labor and that they won't have a kill switch? Aaron, I think this one goes to you.
Yeah, so I think the short answer is we don't start our procurement process until we have the planning consent. So if we are fortunate enough to get a planning consent, we will then start the procurement process. We have guidelines that in terms of sustainable procurement that we have to adhere to, which should help mitigate some of those concerns that you've raised there. There's no point hiding away from these things. Predominantly our panels have come from the Far East. But with the guidelines and the sort of sustainable practices that we have in place, we've been able to ensure sort of quality and ethical nature of where these panels have come from.
All right. The next question is, how many megawatts will the battery storage be and where will it be located, in one area or scattered?
Yeah, so in terms of where it be located, that's to be decided. As we said, we need to do some further surveys and understand. Typically, this needs to be next to where the substation is. The substation is the most visually intrusive part of the scheme. And so for that reason, it will be in the least landscape sensitive area, just obviously to try and hide that. In terms of the megawatts of it, we have a 400 megawatt connection.
All right, I think you already answered this one, but do you want to just repeat the answer quickly? For the new substation, will it be near Kasich or Uffington or right next to the current Royal substation?
For the new substation, so apologies if I wasn't clear, there's two substations. We will have our own customer substation, which will be on site, which we will be able to sort of decide where it goes. And that's, as I've just said then, that'll be next to the battery energy storage, and that'll be sort of chosen after we've undertaken surveys to go to sort of the least visually impactful area. In terms of the other substation, which is a national grid substation, which we will then connect to, we will run an underground cable from this site to there. We don't know where that is just yet. We are pressing National Grid for an answer, but we don't have it confirmed just yet. It's between those points that we showed on the plan earlier. Our gut feeling is with the Western Marshes Eastern Link, the WEML, if you hear that abbreviation. National Grid are putting in quite a big substation towards the north, about 12 kilometres to the north. My gut feeling is they wouldn't put all that money into that and then also update and extend other substations within sort of a close location. So my gut feeling is we'll go to there, but unfortunately at the moment we don't know until we have a signed agreement, an updated signed agreement from National Grid saying this is your point of connection. Unfortunately, we just have to sort of cover all bases at the moment. So that's why you would have seen on the plan earlier, there's sort of quite a few dashed lines to the north, across to the east, and then to the southeast. And that's just to cover a multitude of options. But as soon as we know where we're going, we will obviously eliminate some of the other cable route corridors, and then obviously inform the community and everyone who needs to know.
All right, I think the next question can go to Sophie. The question is, will the land classification change from agricultural?
No, it won't. It won't change the land classification, and the land will be returned to agricultural use after the development, which I know it's a long time, but it is temporary in nature, so no agricultural land will be permanently lost.
All right. Aaron, I think this is back to you. Are they overhead power lines or underground?
In terms of what we're connecting to on the 400 kV system that's already in and existing, that's the existing overhead lines. In terms of how we connect to that'll be underground cables from that point.
And the next question is, do you have landowner support for the area you have chosen?
Yes, so for the solar development site, so where all the panels and associated infrastructure, we'll be progressing with voluntary agreements with landowners for that. In terms of the cable route, we're just obviously, once we know where the cable route goes, in terms of once National Grid have confirmed where we're connecting to, then we can proceed as well with agreements through there.
The next two questions are asking the same thing. It says, how large is the total area and split between solar and mitigation, and how large is the proposed area in total, please?
Yeah, so the proposed area is around 2,000 acres. In terms of the split between what is solar panels and what is mitigation, etc. Again, we don't have that information at the moment, so we'll undertake those surveys over the next 6 months, as we said. We'll then do some design review meetings, also include the local community on that. And then we'll have the survey data to say, okay, actually, you know what, this area is really visually intrusive. This is quite close to Pickworth. Maybe we can pull away from there. Or we might get some ecological surveys that come back and say, actually, this is a really great habitat. We can't put solar panels there. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer for you right now. But as I said, we hope to take you on a journey and be transparent with what land we have. And then we can let you know where the solar panels will go, and then hopefully eventually answer that question as to what's solar panel development and what's mitigation and enhancement.
Okay, so the next question is, what is the long-term plan for the land once the solar panels have reached the end of their functional life cycle?
Yeah, so if we're going for a 60-year consent. So throughout that 60-year period, if the solar panels are defunct anyway, we'll replace them. And then up to that 60-year period, within the approval that we're seeking, we have to fully decommission and restore the land to its current status. And that is a decommission strategy will be submitted as part of our application. So that will explain how we go about returning the land to how it is now. But it's important to note that we won't then rip out the landscaping ecological mitigation we've put in. It will only be the hard infrastructure that we'll be removing. The softer elements that have contributed to biodiversity net gain and ecological enhancement, they will remain.
I think the next question can go to me. It says, what is your criteria geographically for consulting residents, as your reach can be quite broad with the unknowns on the grid connection? So at this stage, we have contacted everyone who lives about 2 kilometers from the project boundary, and that's defined as the area that we showed on the map that was yellow. That's the project's red line boundary. So everyone within that zone should have received a leaflet which introduced the project and invited you to attend this webinar. Once we have more certainty around those cable routes and ahead of the consultation that we'll do next year, we will contact a wider area. That criteria will be defined with Rutland and will include the population that lives around the cable routes as well. All right, so now we have quite a few questions, so I think we'll break these up and divvy them out to the whole team. Some of these we've already answered, so we can do quick responses. So one, how many hectares is the proposed site in totality?
So it would be around 800 hectares. Yeah, 800 to 900 hectares if my quick maths are okay.
I've got the precise figure in front of me, so I can give that. So the solar development site itself is 949.5 hectares in terms of what we're assessing for scoping. Clearly, the grid cable search areas are quite a lot bigger, but obviously they will be refined over time and ultimately just a single cable will be developed. But at the moment, the grid search area is 2,976 hectares. But it's that 949.5 hectares that probably answers the question in terms of the main site itself.
Okay, so the next question is, which parcels of land are essential for the project and connection to the national grid?
Yeah, at the moment, I would say all of it, because we've sort of had to identify enough land so that we can meet our 400 megawatt connection. In terms of, like I say, we'll be undertaking more surveys, so then we'll be able to say what is essential for solar panel areas and what is essential for enhancement and mitigation. Apologies, I don't have more of an answer. Obviously, we've just sort of kicked this off. So yeah, when we have the surveys and we have that information, we'll be happy to share that.
The next two questions are both around the lifespan of the project. The question is, how long is the land leased for, and does the solar farm have the shelf life, and if so, how long? I think you already explained that it was a 60-year limited DCO. Do you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, obviously with that 60 years is what we're going for. So obviously if we get consent for that, it will be in operation for 60 years. Yeah, if that's how long it will run for, like I say, if there's any parts that need to be replaced throughout that time, they will be replaced to make sure that it is running at sort of maximum efficiency throughout its lifetime up until the point when it's decommissioned and then restored.
Okay, so the next question, apologies, I'm getting lost in the questions. What happens to the land after the solar farm has been decommissioned?
Yeah, so our agreements, our land agreements, will only run until that 60-year period is ended. After that, our lease of the land will cease. We will obviously restore it beforehand, and then the lands will be passed back over to the original landowners. So we're only leasing the land for the 60-year period if we are successful.
All right, I think a question for Dave or Sophie. How many acres are being set aside to support wildlife and habitat creation? Can you give a percentage, and how will you increase biodiversity?
Take this one, Sophie, if you like. Yeah, I think Aaron's already covered the land in terms of setting aside for wildlife. We're not at that stage yet, so we've got a number of surveys that have started or will be commencing shortly, which will help us define what land is required for that habitat creation. In terms of increasing biodiversity across the site, there's a number of opportunities, both through strengthening existing features like hedgerows, woodlands and tree lines. And then the space in between the panels and around the panel areas as well offers really good opportunity to improve the habitat for biodiversity. And then we may need to look at wider measures as well, depending on the surveys and what results come back through those in terms of any other mitigation that we require across the site. But there are a number of opportunities there that we can explore.
All right, so the next question is, how will you reduce the aesthetics of the farm?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. As I say, we'll do a landscape and visual impact assessment, which realistically sort of shows where the solar panels are visible and from what receptors. So then we can either choose to not put any solar panels in the really sensitive areas, or maybe where it's sort of middly sensitive, if you would, on a sort of red, amber, green, maybe in the amber areas. We can do additional planting or hedgerow enhancements. So not only does that help visually screen the site and the panels, but also, as Dave sort of mentioned, then it can help enhance habitats and increase our biodiversity net gain. So yeah, it'd be a combination of a landscape assessment to reduce impact, and then where we can't reduce impact, plant and screen to help mitigate.
All right, the next question is about noise. What is the noise level of the BESS and the inverters, and how many would be needed for a project of this size?
Yeah, I think obviously noise is dependent on where you are, so how far away you are from the noise source. Clearly, as I said, the BESS and the substation, which it needs to be next to, will be sort of located in a least sensitive area, and that will also obviously take account of noise impact. So it's a little bit difficult to answer how noisy it would be. I guess that depends where you are, but there will be, as we have to submit a noise and vibration assessment, and that will there's sort of key decibel ratings to make sure that there is no significant observed level of noise nuisance from those. Sophie, I know you got your hand up there.
Yeah, thanks. It's just you were just making that point exactly. Actually, so it's just to build on the point that the assessment will be based on a reasonable worst case scenario as part of the noise chapter in the EIA, which Aaron was just explaining there. We've had to make assumptions based on a reasonable worst case scenario because we don't have the specific information at this time.
All right, the next question perhaps goes back to Dave. What evaluation has been done on the impact of the cabling or will be done on the ecosystem and biodiversity below the ground?
Thanks, Emily. It's a good question. I think we will take that into account in terms of the assessment work, which, as Aaron's mentioned, we've only just started really. So the cabling is an intrinsic part of the development. It will be a key part of the assessment work that's undertaken. And we're aware, particularly the construction methods for the cabling can have an impact, particularly where we need to cross watercourses or hedgerows or tree lines, for example. So all of that will be considered as part of the assessment work as we move forward. And yeah, that will be considered.
Aaron, perhaps this is back to you. Will there be light pollution during the day and night?
No, these are unlit. I think the only place that I've known there's been a light is sometimes at the substation. They have one light above the door, which is on a sort of motion sensor thing. Just obviously if someone is entering late at night to do any maintenance or checks, just for health and safety. But other than that, these are unlit and there is no light spill from that. Conscious, obviously that's only true for operation. During construction, as the winter draws in, there will be some lights on site for construction. But again, that's something that we have to assess as part of our planning application and to ensure there is no light pollution on any receptors such as people's homes or any other sort of sensitive receptors.
All right, the next question is, how will you ensure the safety of horse riders because of the reflective glare as the land goes through some bridle paths?
Happy to take this one. Again, something we're obviously aware that there's a public right of way and bridle ways that go through the site. And within that, we have to submit a glint and glare assessment. So essentially, this is an assessment of, as it says, the glint and glare off the panels to make sure it has no risk to anyone. Obviously, as well, there is the A1 that passes by in HGVs, and there's also the airfield to the north. So all of these different potential receptors need to be assessed. And if they do cause any significant impact, then we'll either have to reorientate the solar panels or remove them from those areas, because essentially without it, we wouldn't get our permission. So that's something we need to factor into our design to make sure that there is no impact on anyone really in terms of glint and glare.
All right, related question is, how many new bridleways and footpaths will be created? It says there are a lot of private paths that could easily be granted permission.
Yeah, I have to take that. I think that's probably the part that I'm looking forward to the most. Obviously, we're aware there's one main public right of way that passes through the majority of the main solar site. But as we do these surveys and understand where the solar panels go and where the landscape mitigation and ecological mitigation goes, and sit down with the local residents, understand, maybe that's a point where people can suggest and say, well, actually, do you know what? It'd be great to have connectivity east to west or something like that. So at the moment, as again, apologies, this is a bit of a stock answer. We don't know. But we really would welcome your thoughts to understand, what would help improve this area for you in terms of maybe some additional routes. And then we can sort of put it onto a design register and assess the feasibility of it, and see if it's deliverable and if it's supported by the local community and the council.
All right, the next question I think is back to you, Dave. It says, how do you measure the impact on soil quality given the cabling underground? If you want to just expand on what you've already spoken about.
So again, as I mentioned, that we are starting survey work. Soil quality and impact on soil is one of those surveys that we're undertaking. So that survey that we're doing will confirm the quality of the soil as it currently stands, and then we will consider the impact on that soil, both during construction operation and decommissioning. So likelihood is we'll submit an outline soil management plan with the application, which will explain how we'll manage soils during construction in particular, but it will also look at how we can better manage soils during operation and potentially improve the soil quality during that time.
All right, Erin, I think back to you about community benefit. It says, what financial compensation are you exploring given the depreciation on the value of properties in the village?
Yeah, Rosie, am I okay to pass this one to yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So at Akira, we do commit to community benefit funds on our projects, and we are at very, very early days of developing this. So that's something that we'd look to explore, kind of what that looks like during the consultation processes. So hopefully that we can talk to you quite closely and understand areas of need in the area and how that community benefit package will work. In terms of financial compensation for property values, I wonder, Aaron, could I pass that back to you and how that looks for the planning?
Yeah, sure. I don't think that's something we've explored previously. I think ultimately what we're aiming to do is agree a figure quite early on for community benefit, instead of just promising it and maybe not being able to see it. We want to be quite transparent with this and give a figure early on. And then we can actually start having some meaningful discussions about what that total package goes to. We don't have that figure right now. Obviously, once we have the total size of the development, we can then work it off as a per megawatt as figure. But once we have that information, as we sort of said with these future consultation events, myself and Rosie and others on the call want to sit down and understand what a sort of bespoke package looks like for the local community, what the local community is, how far reaching that is, and what works best for the majority. So I think all options will be on the table. And it'd just be about understanding what the community wants, because at the end of the day, it's a community benefit fund. It's not really for us to decide. It's more to help discuss with you guys and help facilitate something bespoke for the residents.
Excellent. This might be back to you, Rosie. It says, what is your connection with 548 UK Investment Holdings, who has one of the connection agreements?
Emily, that's probably one I'm going to have to come back to you on, if that's okay. I'm happy to follow that up with Aaron and the team and get a more concrete answer.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm not. Yeah.
Similarly, there's one that says, is the Burgley estate signed up to the project, which I don't believe is a question that we're going to answer, as those are commercially sensitive agreements. The next question is, why are you not looking in the park on Woolfox Airfield, which has already been given approval? Sophie, this one might be best for you.
Sorry, my connection's breaking up a little. Was that a question for me, Emily?
Are you okay to take that one? Yeah.
Sorry if I'm breaking up. Yeah, so we are aware of the Woolfox site, and we're aware that it's been designated as an opportunity area by the council. I think it's unavailable for the applicant. We're aware that it's earmarked for development by another developer already for a major mixed use scheme. So I think the answer is that it's just an unavailable site for us because others are already progressing that site.
Excellent. Okay, so the next question says, please include all 3 councils and residents in your consultation, as your grid connection and battery storage may be in links. I think this one's back to me. Yes, that's correct. So the grid connection cable routes do potentially pass into Lincolnshire. So if that is the case, they become a host authority. And so we would also, of course, consult with them on our statement of community consultation, which is a document we're required to produce that explains how we would enter into the consultation next year. So yes, of course, that's correct. All right, it says, will you offer compensation for the reduction in property value? Pickworth is a small village, and the incentive to live and buy a house in a picturesque village will be removed due to the construction of a solar farm. Aaron, do you want to say anything more about this?
Yeah, I think it's just as before. Obviously, we'll have a community benefit fund, and it's for the community to sort of understand how that's spent. I don't think I've seen anything within the industry in terms of mitigating impacts on house prices. I think it's more gone to other causes. But like we said, there will be a community benefit fund, and we'll work through with the local community to understand what the local community wants and needs and what would add value to that community.
Can I just jump in to add to that we're obviously at very early stages of design. So one of the things that we can do is ensure that the design is designed around feedback, particularly around Pickworth and other homes, to ensure that there aren't significant impacts that would impact property values. Sorry, I just interrupted you. The next question is, how long is the planned construction timescale?
Yeah, so it's 2 years. They're relatively simple and easy to build, despite the scale. So yeah, what we said is on our current program, if we get a decision in 2028, there'll be about a 12 to 18 month delay whereby we sort out our procurement and get sort of our ducks in a row. We would look to start at the earliest as mid 2029 and then be constructed by mid 2031. So a 24-month construction period.
The next question is similarly, it says there's a disconnect between your grid connection in October 2034 and the DC approval in 2028. When would you plan to start construction? Apologies.
Yeah. So that's linked to that. Apologies, I don't know how aware others are about the NESO reforms in terms of grid reforms. So within that, we have applied for an earlier connection date within National Grid. We should hear back whether or not we've had that at the earliest part of next year, and that will then inform our construction program. So at the moment, we have assumed we will get one, and that 2031 completion would align with that. Obviously, if we are unsuccessful, we would then shift everything back so that we finish construction a couple of months before our current connection date of 2034. So that hopefully that just explains that disconnect. Obviously, when we know more in terms of when our updated connection date is, we can then confirm that to everyone who needs to know.
All right, so this is the last question. So if there's anybody else in the audience who wanted to ask a question and you haven't yet, now's the time. The last question is, have all the farmers in the area signed or are they still proposed?
Again, commercially sensitive, so unfortunately can't answer that one.
That's fine. Okay, so with that, we've run out of questions. I'll give it just a second to see if there's any last minute ones, but we would like to thank you for taking the time to come to this webinar and learn a bit more about our proposals and ask some questions. This is the first webinar. There will be a second one next week, Monday at 6 o'clock. So if you know of anyone who wasn't able to attend tonight, they're welcome to either watch the recording on our website or attend that session. You are always welcome to send in any questions through our comms lines. As I don't see any more questions, I'll say thank you. And what are the next steps is the last question.
And also, we have a raised hand as well in the room.
What if next steps? Who wants to take that one? Sophie, is that you maybe?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. So our scoping report is currently being finalised and we're aiming to submit that to the Planning Inspectorate this week. They will then have 42 days to form their formal opinion as to the scope of our environmental statement. So that's where we're at in terms of the progress of the application.
Perfect. All right, well, with that, I think we'll say thank you very much for attending, and we're going to go ahead and end this session. Have a good evening.